Hey everybody, this is Rashmi from Designhill, and I'm super excited to be back again with another event for you guys. First of all, I hope you all are staying safe and doing well. Thank you so much for joining us in this event. Today, we are going to talk about content marketing tips, tricks, and best practices. The event is brought to you by Designhill, which is the world's leading creative marketplace for businesses and individuals alike to source high quality designs from professional designers and buy unique products created by independent artists. I would also like to thank our guest speakers for today who have taken out their time and to join us in this wonderful session. Let me quickly introduce our speakers for the day. Uh, we have Michael Werner. He's a top CMO influencer, motivational speaker, and CEO of Marketing Insider Group. He spent 25 years in sales, marketing, and executive leadership roles and worked with brands like SAP, Nelson, and a number of high growth startups. Michael is also a best selling author of three books, including his latest Mean People Suck, The Content Formula, and Digital Marketing Growth Hacks. Michael, would you like to say a quick hi to the audience?
Yes, hi. Thanks for that wonderful introduction. Hey, everybody. Great to be here.
Moving forward, next we have is Pam Moore. She is the CEO and co-founder of Marketing Nuts, a social media consulting agency that helps small and large businesses to increase brand awareness and achieve defined business goals. As an international keynote speaker, trainer, and consultant, she also helps business leaders and event organizers to increase their ROI. Pam.
Hello. Hi, everybody.
Next we have is John. He helps small and local business owners, professional service providers, and consultants streamline their marketing approach, increase revenue, and scale strategically by providing a proven, practical, and simple system called duct tape marketing. He has also been featured in the New York Times, USA Today, to name a few. John.
Hey, welcome everybody. Looking forward to it.
Last but not the least, we have Jenny Dietrich. She is the co-founder and CEO and author of Spin Sucks and host of Spin Sucks podcast. She is the creator of PESO model and has crafted a certification as well for the same. Along with that, she has also run and grown an agency for last 15 years.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you so much, guys, for taking out your time and joining us for this panel discussion. Before we start, let's quickly look at what Designhill is all about, and then we'll continue with the session.
Looking to get your boss to remember your name? Head to the world's number one creative marketplace, Designhill.
When my company promoted me to head up our latest real estate development project, I was excited, then anxious, then petrified. How was I going to hire the team, get the designs completed, and design beautiful presentation materials on our lean budget while impressing my bosses, some of whom are still learning my name?
Good job, Mitch.
My name's Lawrence. That's why I went to Designhill. I got the design help I needed that fit within my company's brand guidelines. The process was simple. Designhill's design contest ensured I'd get a ton of results I'd love. So by picking a number of designs that inspired me, this one's good, and that's one. This one speaks to me. Then share some information about the project. Lastly, pick a package that fits your budget. Do you just want a logo, or do you want it all? Then, I got more than 60 custom design options to choose from, as well as all the other graphic design assets I wanted. And it's all backed by Designhill's 100% money-back guarantee. If I don't find a design I like, I get my money back. You can't lose. Now I have what I need to make a splash on my meetings. With everything from business cards, pamphlets, posters, and more. It's real.
Let the world know it's real and build your brand with Designhill.
All right, that was a brief intro of Designhill and what do we do. Now let's get started with the session. And Michael, let me start with you first, and then I'll take it to the other panelists as well. So content marketing isn't static. What worked, a few years ago might not work now. So please throw some light on how content marketing has evolved in the past years and what mistakes people are still making that they should avoid.
Yeah, well, thanks for letting me go first. I will say the people that I'm on this panel with are people I've looked up to and followed for years. So I'm really honored to be with all of these smart folks. But I've made a lot of mistakes, so I think I do have some experience to be able to answer the question. I think one of the biggest changes that we've seen is almost everybody is doing content marketing now. The ones that are doing it the best and the ones that are doing it the most effectively with the best results, what I see is it's cultural. The CMO, the chief executive team, the sales groups, the product people, employees in other departments outside of marketing all understand the importance of creating great content for marketing purposes, but also for sales purposes and for training purposes and for employee, onboarding and other kinds of things. So I think what we've seen evolve really is content going from content marketing, from a marketing objective and driven kind of a thing, to something that's really organization wide and accepted, and something that also drives a culture of customer centricity. We've seen a shift, I think, away from product promotion and pitching to one of more, how do we engage our audiences with the expertise and the thought leadership that we have? That's really the change that I've seen happen that I'm excited about and hope to see continue.
Okay. Guinea, what do you think about that? Do you want to add more to it?
I agree. No, I will say, one of the biggest mistakes I see people make, and this always makes me laugh, is we all complain about our overflowing inboxes. We all complain about the crappy content that we get. And then we get behind our computer screens and we pump out the same drivel crap. We're all guilty of it. And I think part of it is because there's still a large gap of education between what content marketing is and can do, and telling a story. So that gap needs to be shortened, and it's certainly a lot easier to just say, sure, we can create content and then we just create drivel, versus actually thinking about it strategically and starting to tell a story.
All right. Pam, let me ask this to you, and then I'll take it to John as well. Because of this whole, global pandemic, marketers are changing their strategies. All the big events have been cancelled. Marketing budget has to be redistributed into different streams. All this, in this, overall changes, what role content has to play in times like this, and how businesses can effectively use content marketing to grow themselves?
Yeah, and so I think that's such an important question right now, because we've seen a lot of our clients, even some of the new clients we've gotten during this pandemic, where they start to just freeze, because we're so afraid to offend people. And so I think it's brands understanding, and no matter the size of your company, it's tiny up to enterprise, that you can, during this time, prove that you actually care about your audience, right? You can be that fabric that just is there for them and helping them with the most basic things. And people just right now want to feel good. We all know that. People want to know that there's hope and that there's good people in the world and good companies in the world. And so some of the same content still works, but it's got to be, I always call it that drumbeat, that right rhythm of really having somebody on your team that has a pulse to how the web feels that day. Right. Yeah. So I don't know about you, Jenny and Michael and John, but there's been days even recently where we've had plans to do some big things online. It's like, okay, we're really going to push this because we're in that drumbeat to push our own stuff a little bit. And then I get on, I'm like, it's dead. Or like people, whatever's going on in the world. So you have to have that person that has some empathy that can feel that. And it's qualitative and quantitative, but it's qualitative too, where you got to feel how people are responding to you right now. But it's an important role, because I think we're seeing our clients now set themselves up for the future too. Like during this time, a little bit goes a long way, and it's not just about mass noise. So
one of the things I think is so funny is that, a lot of I get 10 emails a day from how to market during a pandemic, and you can sum them all up with, we can't spam people. Oh, well, that's a great idea. You're right. That's really all everybody's saying. We should be real and authentic and, helpful. Well, that's always been good marketing. All this is really done. It's I think shown a very bright light on the fact that there's a lot of crappy marketing out there. And I think that's, if anything, hopefully we come away from this, with customers, prospects, consumers having a higher expectation from marketers.
All right, Michael, would you like to add to that? How small businesses can use content marketing in times like this?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's there's a challenge between, I think, as everyone has said, is it appropriate to be pushing messages out into the marketplace? And I had this conversation with a lot of my clients. Do we continue publishing content in the early days of the lockdown? And some of us are still, around the world in a lockdown. And my advice, to marketers at the time, especially on the smaller side, was if you're publishing good thought leadership, expert-driven, helpful content, that's always relevant and always appropriate. And so, I've definitely seen a shift away from some, promotion. I mean, even in my own business as well. So that's my advice is, a good strategy works whether it's a pandemic or not a pandemic, and creating helpful content is always a good idea.
Yeah, and I think, just to add one thing, I think it's letting your content work for you. I'm a big believer in that.
Mm-hmm.
And that if you have good content, it should be working for you for the short, medium, and long term, right? And so the media play doesn't mean just screaming loud. It's putting the right content out there. There's so many facets to that, but with the right people being able to find it and devour it, hopefully.
Well, I think you're right too, Pam, in that there's that empathy piece to it, which is, at the beginning of all of this, everybody said we're all in this together. And I was like, we're not actually all in this together. We're all in this at the same time, but we're all going through different experiences. Some of us have small kids at home and we're trying to teach first grade at the same time. And some of us have college kids that have come back home. Like there's all this stuff that's going on. And while we're going through it together, be empathetic to the fact that everybody has their own distractions and their own issues and their own challenges. And if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, our very basic needs were not being met at that time. So just be empathetic and really understand that there are different perspectives and different experiences. And I think that helps a lot when you're talking about content too.
Exactly. And the day that you didn't promote your audience maybe on a down day.
Right. There might be riots or, federal agents or I don't know.
I think we also need to realize people are listening differently right now. Different mediums, different rhythms themselves, and so while I think the message and the strategies stay the same, I do think we need to explore new ways, different ways that we're getting content to people because they're in different places right now, and so that. I don't think that changes anything other than the need to maybe explore some new channels. That maybe you're not in right now with some of the same message or different formats. I mean, I'm producing a lot more audio content right now, and not just podcast audio content, because I believe at least that there are more people listening in different ways right now.
Absolutely.
Well, it's interesting you say that because I've noticed, people out mowing their lawns at like noon, and that's what they're doing. They're listening to podcasts. They're listening to audio type content and walking their dogs, whatever it happens to be. They're out and about a lot more than I think they were. Certainly we're not commuting like we were, but there are different types of audio listening.
Yeah.
All right, a quick check with the audience right now, guys. Please put your questions in the questions tab. We will be, taking questions at the end of the session. So do not put them in the chat because it gets lost in the conversation. But yeah, we'll be taking up the questions at the end. So John, let me ask this question to you, and then again I'll take it to the other panelists as well. I have received a lot of questions while people were registering for this event, and in general as well, that how should I document my content strategy? How should I go about creating one, and what factors should I consider? So how should businesses start with documenting their content strategy, and what factors should they consider?
So what we do with all of our clients is for us, content is the voice of strategy. It's not another tactic. So first off, it's a strategic conversation. What do we want the world to believe about us? But then I think you have to look at, who your ideal client is, and you have to map out the journey. that they are going to take, or that you want to help guide them on, and understand that people's questions and objectives change at each of those stages. And so for us, the first thing we try to do is map out, what does somebody need when they don't even know what their problem really is yet, or they can't articulate it? What do they need to be hearing, as opposed to then, okay, what do they need to hear that's going to have them trust us? How can they try us? What's the buying experience got to be like? What's the content need to be when we want to have a repeat order or generate a referral? And I think that if you map out, all of those stages or behaviors, that's a great, then you can start saying, well, we need blogs and webinars and whatnot. But, mapping out kind of those changes is a huge part of how you start getting a handle on this editorial approach.
Wonderful. Michael, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, the thought I have behind content strategy, and there's a lot of different ways to do it, and I think this even applies to what John just said, is, a good journalist always applies, the who, what, when, where, why, and how model to every good story. And I think the same is true for content strategy. The problem is, I think most people put the what and the, maybe the when and the how much before they think about really the business case and who their target audience is. So I usually start clients with the why, the business case, and the who. Who are you targeting? And even the where. This is something I love to do. The components of an effective digital experience are pretty simple. Just go to any publisher website and you'll see a good, pretty decent digital experience. Corporate websites don't often look like that. So I usually, love to talk about destinations and the simple things, using images and, having appropriate calls to action, not pop-ups all over the place. Like, those kinds of things are really simple and easy to do. But then you can get into the what do we create and how does it map to the buyer journey and where do we distribute it and how do we measure results. But those are basically the components that I think are important.
Wonderful. Yeah, Pam, please go ahead and add to that.
I was going to say, it's so nice being on a call with people that speak my language. It's hearing me say violence, and I'm like, I want to argue. Most of our lives, we get those looks are true. Overcomplicating it. I'm like, I'm not. But I just agree with Mike 100%. And Michael, or Mikey, we can call him, right? No.
You can call me whatever you want.
So we get the jokes for free with us, right?
That's right.
So, no, but I think the key is asking questions, right? Like what he said, the reason, like what's the reason that we're doing what we're doing? And so many people go straight to that what, and it's slowing down to speed up and being okay with slowing down to speed up. Like if you don't know your audience and you don't know what your audience needs from you, you shouldn't be going and spending the next 2 months in the middle of a pandemic creating content. You should be leveraging that time to research your audience and figure out where you're going to put your content that's going to reach them and help them achieve their goals. Don't overcomplicate it.
And ask them, like,
yeah,
does LinkedIn make sense to you? Does audio make sense? Like, what makes sense? Let's don't stop working in a vacuum and have conversations.
Yes, amen.
All right. So guys, I have also seen, the questions that we have been receiving about lead generation through content marketing. And I think that's a very important question for each one of us over here. And I'm pretty sure that all the attendees who are listening to us live right now, they do really want to know this, that how do we understand, any company's website is a lead generation asset for them. So how to strategically deploy a content that can turn visitors into leads? Please throw some light on that. I'll start with Ginny, and then we'll move forward to Pam and Michael as well.
So how do you use content to generate leads? I think it goes back to what Michael was saying, and certainly John too, in terms of creating the strategy and figuring out the who and the why first. Because if you don't have those answers, it's really challenging to generate leads. And then it is to figure out what that buyer's journey is. And unfortunately, the buyer's journey is not linear. It's cyclical, circular. It's a circle. So you don't know where people are coming in. They might come in, they might have done all this research over here that you don't have access to. and they've talked to people, they've gotten referrals, there's been some word of mouth, but it's all been online. So they may be coming in to what would traditionally be the middle of your funnel, where you would think they'd come in at the top. So you don't know, they're coming in at all different spots. So having the opportunity for them to research and educate and inform themselves, at the same time get the answers that they want. Like a great example of that is when you go to do your own research and you're looking online, and let's just say it's a refrigerator. How frustrating is it that you can't find the price of a refrigerator? You're always going to go to a different website that has the prices listed, because that's what you're trying to figure out is how much does it cost? Can I afford it? Does it fit into my budget? And that goes for anything. It's not just a consumer goods, it's B2B, it's everything. So figuring out that buyer's journey and what they need at that particular time to be able to drive them through. And certainly you can think about, they get free content, gated content, lead nurturing, lead generate, and then it goes into lead generation. So you can think about those triggers, but you have to understand that they're not going to follow that linear process.
All right. Pam, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I agree 100%. And the key thing is just really being tactical and strategic with each piece of your content, right? And it's okay. A lot of people throw that content spaghetti at the wall and hope it sticks and come slop it up. But I mean, not being afraid to have conversion funnels, a lot of sales conversion funnels, our free content, and I would say be careful of listening to your peers as well. So over the years, I mean, I've been doing this a long time. So many people, and I know, Michael, you can relate to this, will tell me, why are you talking about the top 5 tips? Okay. That's so boring. Why aren't you talking about this thought leadership? Well, because the CMO has the same questions on how to use LinkedIn or how to use Twitter.
Right.
So there's the strategy of just like Jenny was saying, the different layers of the conversion funnel and where they come in, and have those hooks that we call them, that you can get them from wherever they are. And then you have to work those conversion funnels on the back end, but start with something simple, with just a lead magnet that somebody can download, that you can put on your podcast, on your blog. You can tweet it out every day. I mean, and over time, as you're serving value to your audience online, you earn the ability to tweet those things out more, right? Because you give them value. And then people will share them. But I mean, to me, it's that whole, have you seen the movie Monty Python, Holy Grail? Where email marketing is like the guy where they're bringing him out and he's like, but I'm not dead yet. And you remember that? And he's like, but you will be by morning. Anybody that says email marketing is dead doesn't know how to use email marketing, in my opinion.
Right.
And
totally agree with you.
It's still the number one converting platform once they come into the funnel to convert to business. So you got to get out of the box of thinking it's just social, and it is, but each of those serve a purpose. And I'll pass the mic now.
Well, the one thing that nobody said yet to this that we do with all of our clients, if we can get them to move this direction, is you have to be as relevant as possible, I think, today.
Yes.
The days when we could have the 7 steps to everything you need to know about social media or something like that, I think, are dead. I mean, people want to know very specific how to solve one specific problem. And so if you're producing content that does that, and then having, marketers love this term, a content upgrade that goes with that specific piece of content, then the person found that content because they're trying to solve a problem. Now they want that relevant piece of upgrade. They're going to give you their email, and all of a sudden now, you really have been so relevant that your conversion is going to be much higher. I mean, instead of 0.5% conversion, you're going to get 10% conversion because somebody, you had exactly what they were clearly looking for. And then they'll listen to more.
All right. Yeah. So, John, as you just talked about content upgradation, and I think I also had this question in my list, which is about, I have seen a lot of blogs which are like which were written years back, and they're still there. They're not updated and they're not upgraded. The content is still the same, which talks about best digital marketing tips in 2015. And the times are changing like crazy. So how important it is to sort of timely upgrade the content which people are writing in terms of blogs or in terms of podcasts, and how frequently they should be done, and does it has any connection with SEO? Like, does it help in improving your SEO as well?
So if were you asking me that one to start off? Yeah, absolutely. We make it a practice annually to go back and look at. We want to prune content. We definitely want to update and upgrade content. From an SEO standpoint, a lot of times we'll be looking at our content that's performing okay, page 2, maybe. And those are great candidates to, let's add more resources. Let's update the images. Let's look at the on-page optimization. Let's change the publish date again, say in a WordPress a publication, because not only do we want to send signals to Google that the content is fresh. I mean, everybody goes out, you go out and you search for something, and a lot of times you'll see dates. Oh, that's from 2016. How relevant could that be? I mean, even if it's the exact same information, we make that assumption. So that's just a standard practice now with everybody we work with.
So you suggest to do it yearly, like once in a year you should review all your previous content and check what needs upgradation. Is that what you're saying?
I mean, it depends on the business. I mean, us as marketers, we have to do that. If we're going to stay relevant at all. I mean, if you're a remodeling contractor, maybe that's not quite as important for you to do, but you may want to go and find opportunities to maybe do better in the search engines based on what content is ranking and not ranking.
Yeah. I mean, just to add to that, I agree with John completely. I think if you have web pages, especially articles that rank on the first page that are older than 3 years, you should have somebody look at them, update them, and republish it with a new date for sure. Another thing that I love to do is, look at articles that I've published that are older than 5 years that get 0 traffic. I usually just kill them.
You don't have any content that gets 0 traffic.
I know.
Believe me, I do. Believe me.
I doubt it.
But yeah, I mean, I think, updating the good stuff, killing and redirecting anything that's old, those are things that I do every week. In fact, if you subscribe to my newsletter, you'll see once or twice a week is an old post that I'm updating, with a refresh.
Yep. Well, and not being afraid for sales to attach, a sale to that content. So like the tripwire, what we call a tripwire, which is a very low dollar sale. We do that with like our content calendar, our buyer persona worksheet. There's a 5-day buyer persona boot camp, to John's point, that gives people exactly what they need to do in 5 days for $27. And then there's the natural upgrade to our higher end courses, consultation, training, workshops, those things. But it all starts with one free offer, right? And so, and then the right people will select that need that help to be part of it. So a lot of times people don't know what they need. They don't know they need those steps. So.
One more final point on the content, refreshing the content. Another thing that works extremely well is to go through content and find natural connections between your content. Mm-hmm. From a structure standpoint, Google gives a lot of credit to content that is structured around, say, a hub theme or around several themes, and a lot of interlinking. So a lot of times we can help SEO dramatically just by restructuring some existing content and linking it together.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, that's some great piece of advice on that. So guys, we talked about lead generation, which is one of the hot topic for businesses out here. I also received a lot of questions with respect to ROI, which is like, a lot of people are not sure that they are producing content in the form of podcasts, in the form of blogs, and a lot of social media posts are happening on a daily basis. So what are the factors that they should consider when it comes to measuring the ROI for all the efforts and time that they are investing in content marketing? So I'll start with Pam, and then we'll take it to Michael and John as well.
Okay. So this, I think it just goes back again to what are your goals, right? So like if you are brand new starting out with content marketing and you don't have an audience at all, you should not only be measuring yourself on likes and clicks, because nobody sees you write your content. And so it's you have to have those milestones that may not be so quantitative at start, unless you're putting, and that's where then, are you putting some paid media behind it? Are you doing some micro influencer marketing, tapping into other people's content and community, which is how we all met in the early days, right? Sharing each other's content and connecting together authentically. There's a lot of ways you can get there, but at the start, it's qualitative, in my opinion, is how are people responding? I remember the early days of Twitter, like what lists were people putting me on? I learned so much about myself coming from corporate with the transition, which where a lot of people are right now, coming out of the stuffy corporate world. And then people started putting me on like coach. And I was like, what? Like all this inspiration stuff. And I went with it, and the crazier I was, the more opinions I had, the more that people loved it. And so those early days, and then as you grow, then you're all about conversions and click-throughs, where you can get to a point where you can predict the sales you're going to get on an email campaign, right? That's where you eventually want to get. But it's looking at bounce rates on your website. How long are people watching your videos? Looking at what's, if you have a podcast, those listens will tell you a lot. Like right now, we went back through our 275 podcasts. There's gold in that data, right? So since 2014, our highest listens, there are consistent themes, right? And we're driving the priorities for our funnels and our courses around those, right? And reinventing them. So look at the content you have, even if it doesn't have that much traffic, and how people are responding to it.
Wonderful. Ginny, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I agree. And I think, harken back to the early days of Twitter. I miss those days.
So much more peaceful.
I know. It was so fun. But it's true. As you're starting out, you're building community, you're building your audience, you figured out where they're hanging out, you're starting to build awareness and reputation with them. And then from there, you start to build the different pieces that can convert. And to Pam's point, we have a Facebook ad campaign that goes specifically to one of our online courses. And I can tell you exactly, if I spend $50, I know exactly how that $50 is going to work. But the first year that we did that, I had no idea. We had to actually build it and watch it and read the data and tweak and test and tweak and test again. But today, 3 years later, I can tell you exactly, if I spend $50, I know how many phone calls we're going to get. I know how many phone calls are going to convert. I know how many, I know exactly. So you can start to look at that kind of data and go, okay, but you have to benchmark it. You can't just say, oh gosh, I'd like to make $10 million next year. As we all would, but how are you going to get there?
Call us and figure it out.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay, that's some great insights coming from Pan and Ginny. Michael, do you have any other points which you would like to cover under how to measure ROI from content marketing?
Yeah, I mean, I not too much to add. I mean, I really agree with what Pam and Ginny said. It's for me, the biggest gaps that most marketers have on the client side is the ability to articulate the business case for why they do what they do, and the ability to talk in business terms with other executives. Like, hey, like Ginny said, if I spend $50, I know what I'm going to get. How many marketers say that to their boss? Like, very, very few, way too few. And so understanding the business case is kind of, like the baseline, the benchmark. Where are you? Do you get organic search traffic? Is it going up or down? Are you ranking for search terms? Are you reaching people better than your competition? That's a simple, easy metric that you can articulate that a salesperson understands. That's how I did it at SAP. It was, hey, we're not ranking for any of the things that our competitors are ranking for. And it's only because we don't do the things that they do, create good content. And so, ranking is one way, organic search. Pam mentioned this earlier. Email marketing, it is definitely it's not dead yet.
No.
Getting an email address. If your marketing can get an email address, that will convert. You can start to, define the path to return on investment. So those are really just some of the things that I try to focus on with our clients.
Well, I just one last point on that, if I can add, just because nobody said this, all of my clients are the boss. They're small business owners, and for them, quite frankly, especially local businesses, Google Analytics is an absolute gift to them. And so if you are not creating conversion goals in Google Analytics that show you, here's where somebody came from that filled out a form, here's where somebody came from that, whether it be an ad campaign or a social post or whatever, that picked up the phone and called us. If you're not creating those and assigning dollar values to those, you're wasting your time and your money.
Great advice. Yes.
Wonderful. So I see there are a few questions in the questions tab. Let's take one questions from there. So John, I'll start with you first, and then I'll take it to the other panelist. Jacqueline has asked this question, and she is asking that creating meaningful content takes time, especially if you want to put it out regularly. How can a small business owner incorporate creating content with something else that they have to do, and what's the strategy that they should adopt?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is, I mean, thank you for the admission. It does take time. To put out good content takes time. There's just no way around that. So then you have to start saying, okay, how can we be more efficient with the time that we spend? So what we try to do is create as much video content as possible. And the real reason for that is because video can be repurposed as audio. It can be broken into chunks. It can be turned into blog posts. It can be turned into an ebook. And so, again, it's always going to take time, but if you use a tip like that to actually say, okay, I've created one piece of content that now is 5 pieces of content, you're going to get more done.
Yeah, I agree, and I take a similar tip to kind of, especially with small business owners. They won't have a problem generally in answering a question by email. And so a lot of times what I'll do is I'll just define an editorial calendar that kind of makes sense from a buyer journey perspective, and then ask a small business owner, hey, what's the problem you solve? And then they'll give me 3 paragraphs. I'm like, guess what? You just wrote a blog post.
Right.
Exactly. But if I ask them, hey, can you write a blog post on, the problem your business solves? They're like, oh, a blog post. I've never done that. And it's just like, ask them in an email a question that they'll love to answer, and you've got a blog post. So those are the things I do, to try to get them to do that once or twice a week with, tricking them in those ways, I think is a great way to get that insight and the passion really out of individuals. It's
and also to add to, if they've got engineers or customer service people, all their sent emails are gold. They sit there all day long answering questions. Well, that's content machine.
One of the things that we do is I actually have a client who he's a great reader, and he in the beginning he would text me a link and he'd be like, did you read this? And so then I would go and read it, and then I'd ask him. Well, what we've gotten to now is he'll still text me the link, but he'll record his thoughts as he's reading it. And, he gets fired up and stuff. And then I just have that transcribed, and that becomes content. And it's really great because it's in his words. We have to humanize it a little bit, from an SEO perspective, and make sure that the words, the ums and ahs and all that are taken out. But it works great, and we get all sorts of content because he's constantly reading, and as he's reading, he's like, okay, so I read this, and he just rants, and it's great. It's great content.
And they usually come in from business owners at Saturday at 10 p.m.
Correct.
When we
I don't care.
I love it. Because I know their creative juices are flowing. I'm like,
right.
I just got one from a client, and it was, here's why our industry is just like what's going on with the Ellen Show. And I don't know if everybody knows what's going on with the Ellen Show, but he was like, and then he went, and he listed all the reasons why his industry is experiencing what he feels, Ellen might be going through. So it was really interesting, but great fodder for a piece of content.
For sure.
That's great. Yeah. And I like the idea of tricking them. So tell me about this.
Yeah. That word coming too. I guess we're not above trickery, right?
Right.
But it's true.
I love how interesting the session is going. So I have a small request from the audience over here. Let us know in the chat what do you think and how interesting it is going. And if you have more questions, just put them up in the questions tab. So I see one more question from Brianna. I think Pam has already answered that question. I would still like to take it to the other panelists. So Brianna is asking that what kind of content to post is a question that small businesses struggle with a lot. How to identify and form the best content for your business. So Ginny, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I think Pam's right in her answer that you have to start with your audience. Who are they? Where are they? I love to tell this story because we used to have a client that makes doors and locks. Very exciting business.
Very exciting.
Yeah, very exciting. But they were trying to figure out how to participate online, and is this something that we should do? And we immediately, my team and I were like, well, LinkedIn makes sense. But then we said, let's ask. So we sent a survey to their customers, to everybody in their email list, and so prospects too, and said, where do you participate online, both professionally and personally? And we discovered that there was a subreddit forum that talks about doors and locks.
Right.
And it's super engaged.
Who knew?
Right? And so that's where they participate, and it has done a lot for them. So I think it's less about trying to figure out, should I be writing a blog post every day, or do I need to do a live stream once a week, or should I be doing a weekly podcast or anything like that, and more about where is your audience hanging out and what kinds of content are they want.
Okay.
Yeah, I would certainly add answering questions is,
Yes.
Every salesperson goes out there, every business owner gets asked, the same questions all the time. And so, there's a really good chance that other people have those same questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd also add that we live in a digital world where finding where those questions are being asked and answered is an easy thing to do. Like every business should know how to do that, and it's not hard. And so that's I think one of the challenges we need to get over is you don't need a rocket scientist to figure this stuff out.
Yeah.
There you go.
I like it. I'm going to get my free buyer persona template.
There we go.
You told us the other day we could do that, so.
I love it.
Okay, so moving forward, John, let me ask you this: is it possible to identify the content gaps that a business can have, and if yes, how to go about it, and how businesses can make a shift if they find any gap in their content?
Well, every business I've ever worked with has gaps in their content because we're as marketers, we're out there seeing the world with kind of a couple kinds of content. It's the here, take a look at my stuff. Here, buy from me. And I think the real gaps are that there's a very large leap between those two things that quite often is an opportunity for how do people get to like your content or like what is going to, I'll tell you the biggest gap, what are you putting out there that's going to make them trust you? Because those, you have to cross those bridges, on your way to, okay, I think I want to try you or I want to buy from you. Again, I don't know if I'm giving you an answer of how to identify those gaps other than just know that they're there.
Yeah, I think we all have gaps. I have gaps.
Yeah.
Drives me crazy. Only so much time in the day.
Is there any other panelists who would like to add to that and answer that question?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, one of the things that I saw is the corporate executive board, which is now part of Gartner, did a really, really detailed study of B2B buyer behavior. And I think this is true even of, in some considered purchases, if you will, on the consumer side. And it was that the biggest gaps were in what they called consensus and validation. And this happens with my clients all the time. Like I have a technology client and they're like, we're talking to system administrators who are deeply technical. And I'm like, yeah, but the system admins aren't buying anything. It's the CIO that's buying them. And the CIO doesn't know what the heck you're talking about. And so basic, simple educational content. What is this thing and why do you need it? That's what the corporate executive board found was the biggest gap in the buyer journey from technology and B2B buyers, from the marketers themselves. The biggest gap was not do we create content for the target audience, but do you create content for the person that's making the buying decision or influencing the buying decision, which unfortunately is a bigger group of people now, and their needs are much more basic, I think. So that's the biggest gap I see is just the simple things, defining what solution you're solving, why it's something you should be solving for. That content doesn't often exist for a lot of companies.
All right. Pam, let me ask you this, and then again, I'll take you to the other panelist. And this is the last question for the day. And guys, if you have any other question, feel free to put them in the questions tab. We're limited by time here. So we will try to answer as many questions as we can. So Pam, I have heard this very often that the more content you post, the better it is, right? And a lot of people say that. So how often companies should go about posting a new blog or coming up with a new podcast? How much is too much? And are there any basic rules to follow when it comes to ranking organically in terms of content posting?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, this is a hard question, but it really varies. And here's my belief. When you're first starting out, I think back to the days when we were first starting and a lot of our clients, like, you do need to have more content because you need to have a base to establish authority. Like, if you only do one blog post a month, I mean, it's going to take you 12 months to just have 12 blog posts or podcasts. And so that's where, a whole other discussion is how to get those, with some of the things I love Michael and John were talking about earlier, leveraging content, turning into multiple pieces, talking to multiple people within the organization. It just doesn't have to be only the content team that's coming up with everything, tapping into the expertise. But I think the most important thing is getting that rhythm and cadence, right? So when we first launched our podcast, we did 5 a week. But I did that on purpose, okay? Because it was starting it was when a lot of people were launching podcasts, and I was coming off of having, 700 blog posts on my blog, and people wanted me to go deeper. So I had a ton of content I could go into. I just went back to my first blog post and started talking about it. And it was just a test. I didn't even know people would listen to me. And so honestly, I was like, we're going to do this as a test. And people loved it, right? We hit top of iTunes from the start. It was the content that helped us hit top of iTunes, along with the reviews. The reviews are golden. And so if you don't have reviews on a thing like an iTunes podcast, you're never going to get to where people are going to see it organically. And so you have to have that rhythm and cadence, but still, I think one good piece of content is better than 5 bad. And so, when it comes to blog posts, 1 a week, I would say, if you're just starting at minimum, you should have. Like right now, our podcast, we're lucky if we're doing 4 a month, right? And we're bringing on some new sponsors, and we're launching a new podcast. I'm not committing to more than 1 a week for each of them. So I would never right now do 5 a week again. But that's why it depends.
A lot.
But
just for you, that's a lot.
It was. But we would record on one day, and we were learning from John Lee Dumas, who is amazing, and we're enrolled in his course. And so I don't ever regret that I did that, because we have massive amount of content that I've had out there now that I've been able to re-leverage those podcasts. Some of them have like 100,000 plus listens on, and so, and it's content that I created back in 2014-15. And I still can now do a new blog post and leverage that same piece of content. Yeah. So the early content, just make sure it's good and that it can be that evergreen content when you're doing the quantity. I'll stop preaching.
Okay. Michael, would you like to add to that? How much content is too much of a content?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that you can do too much until you reach the point where your quality suffers. I mean, it's really I've been saying for years that the quantity versus quality conversation is a false choice. You can create good, frequent content. It's the consistency that matters. I love to say, if you think about the websites that we all read and watch and share, CNN and Fox News don't wake up, one morning and say, "Oh, Trump didn't say something crazy. We're not going to publish any political commentary." Like, they publish political commentary.
That would be a good day.
Right? Every single, maybe it would be good if they stopped, but they don't, right? They publish every day. We're all out there reading it and sharing it. So that's my point. Mark Twain's quote, "Deadlines are the greatest source of inspiration." And he doesn't believe he wrote anything that was really bad because he had a deadline. He had to meet a deadline. And so having a deadline for yourself, consistency, committing to the frequency, and making sure it's as best as it, the best piece of content it can be, that's my tip on this one.
And I will also say that you might write the best piece of content right now, and 5 years from now, you'll look back at it and go, "Oh," but that's because you've practiced for 5 years at this craft. Right. And it probably is really great content right now, but 5 years from now, it's not going to be great content because things have evolved, you've evolved, and you've practiced your craft every day.
Yeah, great point.
Wonderful. So I had one last question in my list, which I received through the registration. So let me ask you that. So John, let me ask you this: which are the best CRM tools available out there in the market, and why so?
That's easy. The best CRM tool is the one you'll actually use. And I'm not
Fair.
really being flippant. I mean, a lot of people look at these tools and they go, oh, this one does this for me, and now I'm going to switch to this one because it says it has this feature, and then we don't use anything, or we don't, we certainly don't use it anywhere close to the effectiveness. So, a tool that allows you that I could name a dozen tools, and they all have the same feature set, and they all cost about the same, and they all do about the same thing. So it's really more about the process of using a tool, process of communicating with your customers, process of building a pipeline that your salespeople can actually use. The tool itself, plug any of them in. That's my take.
Yes, that's actually a great answer. I agree.
All right, guys. So all right. That was the last question for this session, and that brings me to this end of the wonderful session and the wonderful discussion that we have had. It was indeed a value-packed session where we touched upon a lot of stuff on content marketing trends and tips and what you should be doing to, to grow your business with the help of content marketing. Although there was a lot more that we could have covered, but unfortunately we have limited time here. And I hope you enjoyed this session. I hope you guys loved the whole session, and I would like to thank again to our panelists for joining me in this wonderful discussion. Would you like to say, anything to the audience, guys? Michael?
No, just thanks for having me. It's
Thank
great to
you.
be here.
Yeah.
Thank you. You know what? We should just all spend the day together. No.
Yeah, we could.
Okay. Okay. So, all right, guys, this is not where it ends. We have a lot more events lined up for you in the coming days. The next event is on how businesses can create culture of excellence, and the second event is on SEO strategies and best practices. You can check out designhill.com/events, and all the events are already there. And if you have not registered so far, you can register for them as per your interest. This whole session is going to be recorded, and you can always find out the previous sessions that we have had on our YouTube channel as well. And all the business owners who are listening to this and wish to source high quality design, you can visit designhill.com. On that note, I would like to say bye to everyone who joined us here today. Take care and stay safe. Thank you so much for joining us.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Everybody.
Have a good day.